Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GANs processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Okay, we see your screen, Alex. Thank you very much for joining us today. And the disclaimer was just right in time after Daniel's testimonial, let's say. And I think we're going to be hearing millions of very similar testimonials, and even greater and even lesser. But many people are going to have that testimonial, and they'll be willing to deliver it because they've benefited from where they've sought help and from other places for years, and they didn't find any. And this plasma technology is going to shock, as I say, the world, and man can't imagine yet what this technology will provide.
Thank you very much, Mark, for running a wonderful meeting, and I want to thank all the participants who have contributed today. Really wonderful to hear. Many souls are hoping to hear this type of positivity coming out, and that's what plasma energy is. It's always positive. So I would like to carry on, and I want to welcome everyone. This is the Keshe Foundation TV Spaceship Institute, and our family is growing, and it will grow to quite a large number. And so this week I've added the Romanian team to this banner because of their wonderful presentation on Friday with the Brazilian team. And this is the key, that the teams are all starting to work together. And this is the way, this is the only way really to break through. And so in many ways, the question is, what is it that we have to break through? And so, as I said last week, we were going to close a chapter. And this week we're going to open up a new chapter. And this is another presentation of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute on plasma science. But we've finished with the basic teaching. We've finished with the basic understanding. We really have to move on. We can't move on at the rate that Mr. Keshe is moving. He's moving at a phenomenal rate, but we certainly can stay within proximity. One of the reasons that I'm going in this particular direction is because on the one hand, I'm very, very pleased to see people using the terminology and using it in the proper context, but still we're having difficulty grasping some of the concepts. And so I think it's very good to complement the teachings that are going around all over the place. and to complement the review of the teachings. So my name is Alexander. I'm part of the Canadian Corona team, and this is June 27th, 2021. This is now the Keshe Foundation North American Plasma Education Series, combination of the Canadian, American, and Mexican teams. And this presentation today, as has been the pattern for the past few months, is actually an international team. And I want to thank all the international participants who are joining in because it's really making this a powerful day. So let's get into it, and hopefully, please remember that the goal of this is to offer the teaching to the new students. It is to reinforce the knowledge of the mature students, but more importantly, we're all seeing how much we are in need of more teachers. And so everyone teaches in their own way. So please take from these teachings what you feel is appropriate for your capability, and go accordingly, and understand that we are all part of the same team. In this particular series, this has been following up I guess it's almost 8 years now that Mr. Keshe has been doing the Knowledge Seekers workshops, and it's thousands of hours that are committed consistently. So we've tried to summarize that in basic teaching, the fundamental of which was terminology. And just to let everyone know, we have succeeded in doing this with the Brazilian and Italian community, and we are starting to see the payoff. The intermediate teaching was in January, the advanced teaching was in February of this year. And as part of the North American team, we tried to extend the basic understanding, and some of the subjects, the most recent subjects we discussed were the brain, the bones, memory, transmutation, hormones, and last week we discussed the PM text, which are the rays. And so we'd like to go further, because we'd like to extend this into the intermediate understanding. And today we're going to discuss divergence. And what does that mean? But first thing I'd like to do is to let the knowledge seekers who came to the foundation and attracted with the cup of life, and who are probably scratching their heads and wondering, well, why do I need to know all this other stuff? That's all I want. I just want the cup of life, and help me with my tiny, perfect little world. And the thing is that in our tiny, perfect world, we are used to setting limitations. And in the plasma science, there are no limitations. And the most important limitation to overcome has not only to learn the terminology, but to use the terminology in the proper context. And for this, I'm extremely gratified. And for this, I'm really seeing the benefits that a lot of students are coming with, especially, as I say, in the Brazilian and Italian community. So this is boding very, very well. But there's still a lot of misunderstanding as what it means with respect to magnetical and gravitational forces, and what it means with respect to natural plasma. And so many of us, as we're starting to dabble in this, we have this reservation because of the constant abuse that we get, and ridicule. And we have to understand that, you know, all of us were born, and it is because of this and the failings of science to be able to explain that we have now had to step forward and explain that, and we have succeeded in doing that. And so what I'd like to do with this intermediate classes, and I apologize for this long preamble, but it sets the groundwork for the next course of action, and that is that we need to delve deeper into what it means to be magnetical, what it means to be gravitational, because our field of reference at this point in time is our little tiny perfect world. And what we're becoming, what's becoming glaringly apparent is that the rules that we are talking about not only apply to this world, but apply to space. And so the Keshe Foundation is a spaceship organization. And so the question is, well, how are these rules now on this planet? If we have new rules in outer space, well, the point is they're not new rules. What is new is that our understanding that energy is always in motion, and energy is a charge always in motion and goes through various dimensions. And it is the plasma science that has this dynamism. And so this dynamism begins with the magnetical forces. And so to our dismay, not only do we see the plants, which are the vertical people, the animals, which are the horizontal people, insects, the bacteria, the single-celled organisms, and the viral conditions that are traveling around, not only inside this planet, but outside of this planet. They all seem to understand it as we seem to have this problem. And so we're trying to break down these barriers. And it's not a big barrier to break down. It's a habit, really. And we all know how difficult it is to break down habits. So let's carry on, because awareness is key. So the thing is that despite the simplification of seeking the understanding of the cups of life, we are concerned with the universal order of creation of matters. And so there's 2 points here. One is the universal order. There is no chaos theory. I guess that's another theory that needs to go in the trash bin. It's a universal order, and it's not a theory because you were born. So there's your proof. And so the creation of matter is also not a theory because you're on this planet and you're in physical state, and this planet is in physical state. So there's your proof. So all of a sudden you have the same capabilities as the rocket scientist. And the thing that we are having difficulty understanding, because we don't have labs in our house. Well, actually we do, we call them kitchens, but we don't treat them as a lab, is the structure of light. And today we're going to dabble in that because we're going to be talking about illumination. And, again, a lot of people are using the words in the wrong context. And all it has to do is to misdirect, misguide, and deceive. And we're in the process of trying to clear things up. So the best way to clear things up is to have an organization, well, just like the universal order. And so what I've tried to do with the terminology is to have a coexistence between our linear dimensions, which involve the X, Y, and Z axis, and our plasmatic dimensions, which involve transmission, transition, and transmutation, and how these are affected through rotation, polarity, and field strength. And so today I'd like to concentrate on the combination of polarity and field strength, because there's a meaning that goes with this. And it affects what we call transmutation, which we have discovered is broken down into 2 other fields, transformation and transportation, and what those mean. And all these things are an interpretation of plasma and its dynamic interaction, which brings on the dynamic plasma. And our souls operate this way. Our emotion operates this way. We have limitations in our physicality. And so what we want to look at is how can our physical ranges transcend other ranges. And so we have, as I said, a lot of misinformation, but always look for some kind of semblance and some kind of retreat where you can rest assured that everything is in order. And that is that energy is always positive. So we know that. And however, energy has a motion, and energy is defined in motion by its charge, which is negative or positive. And so that has a different meaning. And in simple terms, on this planet, we've said motion is determined by the surface to volume ratio. So the higher the ratio, the higher the negative charge, where the negative is to giving. But the negative gives to the positive because the positive takes. But the positive also gives to the negative. And so in a binding energy, that's like a dog chasing its tail. But in a flowing energy, that's like a plasma interaction of dynamic fields. And this is where the energy can be flowing or binding. And not only that, but we can do both. And there's no limitation on that. There's no switch that we have to throw. This is automatic. What we have to understand with the plasma science is that if energy is always in motion, then energy is in motion not only on this planet, but it's in outer space. And how do these energies come together? Because actually there is no binding. These energies are flowing all over the place. So how do we go from the flowing to the binding? And so there has to be some kind of common relationship. And when there is this commonality, then the forces begin to rotate and create a little dance where they begin with the X and the Y axis. So we've seen that energy is always in motion and it carries a charge. And this charge ends up being the universal currency. So on this planet, in our society, money is the currency. In physics, electrons are the currency. In the plasma science, energy is the currency. And it's non-visible, non-tangible. And so this becomes the fuel of the universe. But this is not the kind of fuel that we understand on this planet, where we have consumption. We have coordination. We have interaction. And so once we have a basis of attracting this energy, it keeps on coming. And because energy is always in motion, we can't grab onto it. You can grab onto a battery. Everybody understands that. But can you grab onto the energy inside the battery? Well, no, you can't. But we all understand that we can deplete the energy inside a battery. And so it's simple enough to understand. Batteries are ubiquitous in our life, but we seem to have trouble understanding the plasma science. And in simple terms, well, can you get any more simpler than that? And so we understand that the energy has to have a boundary or basis and a containment. And so it creates a rotating field. And so this is where we have our 3 dimensions, but they're not linear. They form a plasma field. And so this is something that we can't see. But if we get an image of a plasma scan and we look at these fields and we see that the x-axis is associated with the rotation and the y-axis is associated with the energy transfer through the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And the z-axis is how big and how fat is the field and how strong is the field. And so these are the various planes of operation in the plasma science. But one thing I'd like you to notice is that there's a lot more concentration in the center and there's less concentration in the periphery. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about divergence. Excuse me. So one of the things about divergence has to do with repulsion. And in terms of understanding repulsion, we have to understand that when we have 2 poles that come together, if they're the same charge, they repel. That's what repulsion is. And that is a magnetical charge. So if we review the creation of principal matter, and we see that the PM ticks, which are charges in motion, the PM ticks are looking for a home. So they are magnetical. They don't have a, shall we say, a mag-grav condition as we understand it as a plasma. But they are self-contained in their own mag-grav because there is a positive and negative construct, but they are magnetical and they are energy packs. So they are the energy in the battery without the battery. And they come, not only as an energy pack, but in a parcel, and they keep coming. So there's a whole bunch of parcels. And this was the origination of the virus. But the virus that we were talking about was irrelevant because the viruses in outer space are far more severe than anything we've ever seen. And so there's a reason why those viruses in outer space are different from the viruses on this planet, despite the fact that we're having a pandemic here. But, you know, way before the pandemic was done here, and, you know, even if we want to just put a date on it and say November 2018, we have already announced to the public domain that there are ways and means of dealing with viruses. And so, you know, it's been, well, I guess it's been pushing 3 years now. So this information has been out in public domain. And so the viruses are also operating on the plasma rules. And the plasma rules are looking for force field interaction when you have something in common. And so going back to the plasma energy, the basis of the plasma energy is the interaction of the antimatter, dark matter, and matter, and that forms a maggrav. So when we see the formation of the maggrav condition, which we can't see with the visible eye, this is plasma. And so a PM tick is plasma in motion. And what we do understand is our physical Earth. So we have a ground, we have an equator, we have a magnetosphere, we have a north, and we have a south pole. And now we've learned about nano and GAN state, and we've learned how to balance these things. And we're starting to get an inclination of what the plasma state is all about. And so the plasma state is a manifestation of energy in motion, and this energy in motion is coming from PM ticks. But not all PM ticks are the same, and this is the key point. So we are not talking about one ice cream flavor, and when we talk about ice cream, we say it's vanilla, okay, because it's just to be not differentiated. So the PM ticks are also vanilla flavored. But in an ice cream shop, you have many different flavors of ice cream. And so we have to understand that these PM ticks in motion and the number that is associated, well, there is no top number. There is no top number. We have 7 billion souls on this planet. We have 70 trillion cells in each body. And each cell is unique. So each of these unique cells are in the bodies of the unique 7 billion souls. So if you do the math, you find what's going on with respect to humanity in terms of a number of energy packs. But that's just us. There are way more plants and animals, and way more insects, and in fact, way more bacteria and single cell organisms. So, you know, it's more digits than my calculator can calculate. So, and these are all unique. Wow, isn't that amazing? So this is the amazing part that's been given to us in terms of our reality, our real reality. And it's a wonder that we're having this resistance to the real reality. So this energy that is in the universe comes to us in a magnetical gravitational form. And today we are going to concentrate on the magnetical form, which is actually repulsion. And repulsion, by another name, is emission. So one of the discussions that we have with respect to emission is we emit what we don't need. But what we don't need could be a toxin, or it could be an excess. So it doesn't necessarily dictate whether or not this emission is good or bad. It's just an emission. And So we have to emit energy first. And so when we look at the Earth, it operates the same way. So before it can take energy in, it has to emit. So the energy has to go out. And the energy follows this pathway. And this pathway is all around. It goes out and then it comes in. But to maintain it, it has to go around. If we don't have the susceptibility to attract this energy, then it just goes right on through. Because it goes right on through, we would be lying to ourselves to say that it doesn't exist. Now we know that it exists because at least that's one thing that finally science does admit, that what you don't have still exists, even though they're having trouble admitting a whole bunch of other things. But the point that we're trying to say here is that we can see how the Earth operates. So if we look at the forces that are keeping this Earth together, we can see that energy is constantly coming, and it's coming from different directions. And actually, it's coming in different flavors. And in order to keep that energy on this Earth, we have to have a rotating field. The rotating field of the Earth is not the same as the rotation of the Earth. The rotating field is based on a magnetical field. So that's what we're talking about today, the magnetical field. But just to review, the next phase would be the gravitational field. And when the two come together, you create a maggrav. So this field now can give and take. But always the question is, this maggrav now gives and takes. So it has the same characteristic as the individual fields, right? So when we look at the basic components and we see that we were talking about magnetical, in physical science, we talk about an electron. So an electron does not have a proton or a neutron, right? Because it's an electron, hello. So it is magnetical. And the neutron is another core component. And of course, the neutron doesn't have the electron or the proton, so it's gravitational. But it has, both of them have matter, antimatter, and dark matter, which is a plasma. And so when we put the two together, you see that the electron is magnetical, and the neutron is gravitational. And I don't know why people can't see the difference. I thought it's pretty obvious here. Can you not see the difference? So anyway, let's do an experiment here. We're all familiar with the circular magnets. So what I wanted to go back to is the circular magnets, and so we understand that the magnets are physical, and the magnetical field goes in a rotating field. And we know that there is a field, you know, because if you ever have any doubt, put your finger between the two magnets and that'll remove the doubt. But today we're only going to concentrate on repulsion. And so these two magnets are linked together, and they are actually on a towel on a smooth surface. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just change the game here a little bit, and we're going to scrunch up the towel here. Scrunch is a Canadian word for bunch up and squeeze, okay? So it's a special word. We scrunched it up, and these magnets are together. But there is an energy between them that we can't see. And so we are holding these two magnets together forcibly. And what we're going to do is we're going to release that external force that is holding them together. So here we go. This is repulsion. That force is now in action. And the repulsion pushes the magnets away. But we still have the towel scrunched up. Not as much as it was before, less, but it's still scrunched up. So at some point in time, this repulsion stopped working. So there's a limit to the repulsion. And this is a really good thing, because if we didn't limit this repulsion, it would have just carried right on and probably gone through the wall and done some serious damage. So I'm really glad that it stopped a few centimeters away, and so I could see that. But the thing about this is an incorrect picture. Just as when we look at our dimension building, these magnets are like points, and they have fields. And when you have two, there's a connection. So today, this connection, we're saying, is a repulsion. And that's all we're talking about, is just a repulsion. But the problem with this picture, you see, is that the two magnets are physically the same size. And the problem with this diagram is that these 2 points are the same size. And that is unnatural. What is natural is to have 2 points that are of different sizes. When you have the different sizes, then you can have a relationship between the magnetical and gravitational field forces. And then you have the energy going back and forth. So when we're looking at the creation of the universe and how the universe is created, it exists from energy. And this energy is looking for a home. And so we have to create a matter. And so you're looking at the cover of book number 1, which is a combination of matter, antimatter, and dark matter into a Magravh condition, but that is in singularity. So when you're looking at the picture on the right, you have the duality, which is interacting of the plasma in a dynamic field, which is represented by the infinity loop. So we understand that the basic rule is the larger one is feeding the smaller one, and the smaller one is able to feed something else. And so what it's doing is it's repelling, because when we looked at the magnets, they have this structure. They have a magnetical gravitational fields. The magnets that we've shown are a Magravh. And the two Magravs were interacting, but they repelled each other. They repelled each other. And so this is the energy. One of the things I want to talk about today is one of the representations of energy. So we had an opportunity to photograph a rainbow. And there's a bright rainbow here. And we've seen that on the inside of the arc, of the bright rainbow, it's in the blue side. And the outside arc of that same rainbow is on the red side. And maybe it's difficult to see, it's much more faint, but there is a second rainbow, and the sequence is reversed. So the red is on the inside and the blue is on the outside. So we were looking at the sun view of the matter plasma. So what the sun was doing was interacting with the earth. And that interaction was the light. And that light manifested itself into physicality. So we have this earth. And we have come to this earth as physical beings. So we have followed this. And then we look around, everything that we can see is a representation of a manifestation of this light matter. Okay, so what we are actually seeing from the Earth's point of view is we are seeing the ground and we're seeing the magnetosphere. And in this case, thanks to this rainbow, the magnetosphere is coming to focus where we can see through the rainbow, we can see the different energy levels of light. And we understand that they are different energy levels because we have been able to take their frequency. And so with the frequency, we find that this is a matter state condition and it's a representative of light. And so here we have some physical characteristics of visible light. And so we find that the frequency in the blue zone is higher than the frequency in the red zone. And because the frequency is higher in the blue zone, and because the blue is on the inside of the rainbow, that is gravitational. So the frequency in the red zone is magnetical. So we find that the magnetical is part of the magnetosphere. Well, gee, that makes sense. So that's the part that is being emitted. The Earth is emitting that. And that is one part of the boundary. And so we are able to measure this light, and we know that light travels at the speed of light. And science has told us that the speed of light is constant. So before we get into that can of worms, we just want to review some math. And this is intermediate teaching, so please bear with me. But we know that Dino Kraspedon was a brilliant Brazilian mathematician. And he defined a relationship between the X, Y, and Z axis. But that's in a linear mode. We understand that perpendicularity, which is right angles, if you take 4 perpendiculars together, each perpendicular being 90 degrees, and you add the 4 90 degrees together, you get a circle of 360 degrees. And so that is your rotating field. And what we're going to do today is we are going to look at just one quadrant. And so quadrant is the 90 degrees. And we're talking about light, right? So in order to talk about things, you have to have a relationship. And so we've gone from singularity to duality to trinity. And because we're talking about that, we find that we're none of these dimensions. So what dimension are we? And so we find that the creation of our dimension is coming from another dimension, which is PM ticks in motion. And so now we've opened up a whole new can of worms, or in this case, a can of sardines. And how do we put this back in? Well, we don't put it back in. We just have to understand which field reference we're operating in, because the dimension is the context. So we have to establish a relationship. So right now, our relationship is on Earth. So let's look at Earth, and let's look at light. And so there's one phenomenon about light, and that is the inverse square law. The inverse square law is a relationship, and it's a relationship between intensity, and distance. It's a very simple relationship. The farther away from the flashlight, the less the intensity. Or in other words, there is a relationship. If you double the distance away from the flashlight, you will have the intensity. In other words, cut it in half. Okay, so as they get closer to the flashlight, the intensity actually increases. So as the distance shortens, the intensity increases. Okay, so we have a relationship there. And I had a chance to look in the encyclopedia. And don't ask me if it's the ordinary encyclopedia or the Catholic encyclopedia, because they're both owned by the same organization, so it doesn't really matter. But what we were talking about is luminous intensity. And luminous intensity identifies visible light. The luminous intensity is the quantity of visible light that is emitted. Okay. And it's in a unit time. Oh, okay. So it has to be visible. It involves time. Okay. And this light is flowing from a source. And the time of reference is 1 second. So that is a second that you see on your clock. Okay. And so there's a relationship, and they have evaluated this relationship and referenced it to visual sensation. Well, wait a second. That is a massive violation of the basic rules of science. Science is the verification and validation by man-made means. And sensation, although men and women, use it, it's not manufactured by man. It's not a manufactured machine. It's a natural machine. So right here, we have a violation. But through this violation, we have set a reference, and this reference pertains to watts of energy, of radiant power. Well, watts of radiant power now involve energy. So there's a relationship between light and energy. Oh, well, that's how convenient. And then as we go through this, we find that it has to do with a point enclosed by a spherical surface. Well, doesn't that make sense? If energy is in motion, the only way that you can contain that energy is through a rotating field. Okay, so this is pretty interesting, I would say. Then we look at another equation, and this is called acceleration. And so when we look at this, and what acceleration is a representation between the change in velocity, the change in velocity or the change in speed over the change in time. Well, the thing is, when you look at velocity, and then you look at the change in the velocity, so regardless of what the velocity is, it's the change in velocity that affects its acceleration. And so the time keeps moving, but that doesn't matter because the time is related to the change in velocity. And the science says that the speed of light is constant. If the speed of light is constant, then the change in velocity is 0. And if the change in velocity is 0, then the acceleration is 0. Something wrong there. So we now have a relationship between time and distance, and then lo and behold, out comes the theory of relativity, which is the foundation of modern science. And we see that energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. Well, if the change in velocity is 0, then energy is 0, because the speed of light then is 0. This is your 0-point energy, another falsehood, another misunderstanding, something more to throw in the scrap heap. One more thing, force. Force involves acceleration, and force involves mass. So if we multiply the mass times the acceleration, we get the force. But if the acceleration is 0, then the force is 0. So all we're left with is the mass. We got problems. So the solution to the problem is to understand that light has mass, and that light has different speeds. And so we have a soul light, we have a spirit light, we have a mind light, we have an emotion light, we have a mass light, and we have a Gans light. And this is how the plasma is formed. So when we look at the relationship of the speed of light, we find that the mass is constant and the speed of light is constant. So how can the energy change? Doesn't add up. So we find that in book number 2, The Structure of Light, we see that light has mass, and now we understand the soul operates the same way. So the soul has mass. Where does this energy come from? What is this energy? This energy is PM ticks in motion. Where does this come from? So we look at the new model of the nuclear decay of the neutron. And the neutron, which is an initial fundamental plasma, which is a combination of the matter, antimatter, and dark matter, goes through a decay process. Nuclear science says it may take 20,000, 50,000 years, whatever. But the plasma science says we can do that very, very quickly, and it's done all the time. So the neutron will break up into an electron and a proton, which is a marriage of energy. And we found that the energy involved with the neutron and with the electron and the proton does not add up to the mass of the neutron. So where's the difference? Well, the difference is the release of the PM ticks. Okay, that's the energy currency of plasma. And so now we know where the PM ticks are originating from. And these PM ticks are energy in motion. And as you can see from energy in motion, now we said that PM ticks are magnetical. So when you look at a plasma field, you see the concentration in the center, and you see the less intensity on the periphery. So the less intensity is magnetical. That's why plants grow up. Plants radiate and gravitate towards the sunlight. Okay, so they're attracted to the light. So the top of the flower then is magnetical, and it is going towards the magnetical direction the same way that the energy from the earth is going to the magnetosphere. It's all going in the same direction. So the plants seem to understand this. We're the ones who have this problem. So when we look at plasma fields working together and we say, okay, these fields, in order to have a friction, have to be rotating in the same direction. If these fields are rotating in the same direction, then they have to have the same poles. And if they have the same poles, then there has to be repulsion. And so if there is repulsion, then we see the friction, and then we see the divergence of the friction, because this is the same thing that you would see, for instance, if you were using a grindstone and sharpening a knife. You would see sparks flying all over, and these sparks would be in different strengths, they would be in different lengths, but they would be diverging because these are magnetical, and magnetical charges are negative. And so all the magnetical charges are negative, so therefore they will repel. That's what causes the divergence. Okay, well, that's good. Okay, so when you have this divergence, what you are creating is the same thing as happens, as I said, with the knife on the grindstone, but it's also the same thing that is happening with the plasma. And all of this is part of ray creation. This is where the energy comes from. So everything that you're seeing in this picture is not visible to the naked eye. And you say, well, wait a second. We are discussing illumination, which is light that is visible to the naked eye. But we know that there is light and frequencies of light that is beyond the visible range of the color spectrum. So we are talking about invisible light. So we understand that there's invisible light. Well, why are we having trouble with the light that we're not seeing and the plasma that we're not seeing? It's operating by the same rules. And so let's look at what is happening on this planet. We see that we have energy flowing that is between the ground and the sky. And if we draw a tangent line is a flat line meeting a certain point on the Earth. And at that meeting point of the Earth, we draw a perpendicular line, which is a right angle line to the tangent, 90 degrees to the tangent, right? But if we draw two, because the Earth is curved, these two will be at a different angle. So although the right angle is 90 degrees to the tangent, the two tangents are in different positions. So we find that the distance between the two tangent lines at the surface of the Earth is less than the distance of the tangents at the perpendicular lines near the magnetosphere. So we find that when we have divergence, right, that we find this is why planes fly in the sky and we walk in the ground. Okay, but the energy still keeps coming and going. And it's always coming and going and always going around. And we don't see this energy and we take it for granted. So what we have seen that with respect to our position, we are gravitational because we are plasmatic and our relationship to the Earth is magnetical. But the plants, okay, the plants are married to the Earth, which is gravitational, and the flowers grow vertically to the magnetical side. So the magnetical side is the divergence. And of course, the flower is bigger than the stalk. So why? Because there's more room. Okay. So the diversion is different from acceleration because acceleration involves direction. And so the acceleration really is a relationship to the ground. Okay, so if I take a flashlight and point it to the ground, then I can see the divergence of the light on the ground. But what happens if I flip the flashlight and let's say I point it towards the ceiling? I will see the same divergence. So whatever we're measuring, we find that acceleration is directional, but the intensity of the light is not directional. So not only can we go up or down, but we can go left or right if we wanted to. So if we apply this principle to the Earth, and we say that the light going from the Earth to the sky is diverging at the magnetosphere, okay, but what we know is that the light is coming from the sun. Okay, so we still have a problem here. So the problem is that the sun is giving us the light and the Earth doesn't have the same intensity. So this is something that we need to figure out. Our position is basically in physicality on the ground, and we can move on the ground. So our physicality, being of a lower energy, is magnetical, but our soul, being of a higher energy, is gravitational. And our soul is liberated in our dreams. And our soul is busy in our physicality. And so when we go to sleep, the soul doesn't have to be so busy with our physicality. And then the question is, which soul are we talking about? So we have a soul of the body, takes care of us when we sleep. But when we talk about the elevation, we have another soul, the soul of man, which is working in a higher range. What do you mean by a higher range? So the higher range ends up being the decision to unchain man. Unchain man through the nanotechnology, unchain man through the GANS technology. So we find the negative is on the periphery. The negative is divergent from the core. That's how it works. So we see that our point of view is what has to take shape. The matter state, small m matter state, which is physical, is the lowest energy. And the lowest energy is magnetical. And the dynamic plasma state is the highest energy. The highest energy is gravitational. And we have a relationship with that. And now we become aware. And not only that, but we understand that there's a visible reality and a non-visible reality. Okay, and the rules are basically the same. So the thing is that as we move through the various energy states, the lowest energy state is the transference of heat and electricity. Another energy state is nuclear physics. We are all now able to do the cups of life within our homes, within our kitchens, within our basements. Every one of us is capable of doing this. And these plasma cups of life are emitting dynamic plasma fields. And these fields are growing. And as these fields grow, they are growing through the magnetical forces. However, these forces, field forces, are gravitational. So now we have something to talk about. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. We still have to find out whose turn it is on this game of tic-tac-toe, right? We don't know if it's here or there or where it is. Today, we've only talked about one aspect of it. We've reinforced the magnetical content, but we understand that the magnetical contact is just in singularity. And so we can have a magrav in singularity, where we have the magrav being alone, but it has a magnetical gravitational construct. And then if we take and rearrange the polarity, we can bring in a second one. And then when we have the two, then we have a duality. And if we carry that on, we can have a trinity. And so this is a basic magrav that we've been discussing for many, many years. And there's energy that's flowing. There's energy that's flowing from top to bottom. There's energy that's flowing in between. Okay, we know this energy is flowing because energy is always in motion. But, then we add the transmission, which is the x-axis. So we now have a central point, a rotating field around the center. So we have verticals that are in through the poles, and we have a horizontal that is through the equator. And it's still a magrav condition. And in order to maintain this magrav condition, the energy has to come in. But before the energy comes in, it has to go out. So in order for that energy to go out, it has to be weaker. It means it has to be magnetical. And so that is what we're talking about today, is the divergence, the release of the magnetical energy. And so when we look at our relationship with outer space, we are looking at it from the point of view of the Earth. What we're seeing is the weakest point. We need to change our point of view and understand that the plasma sciences involves attraction and repulsion. or shall we say repulsion and attraction. And today we only talked about repulsion. And what is repulsion? It's part of the MAGRAV condition, which involves attraction and repulsion or attraction. And so that depends on the direction of flow. So whether it's magnetical is the MAGRAV plus the emission, plus the divergent energy. And if it's a MAGRAV gravitational, then it's plus the gravitational energy. And we'll talk about that next week. The point is that the cups of life are not called the cups of the pandemic. They're the cups of life because energy is in motion, energy is abundant from the universe, and energy is the currency of life. And we have created a cup within our matter state field, the small m matter. And so mustn't forget how important this is, because all of these fields need to be tied in together. We have a big mountain to climb, and we now have the technology to do it. Make your zinc plate and copper coil, nanocoat those copper coils, put them in the cup, envision the magnetic field and understand how it operates. That's what we talked about today. It will have a gravitational field and increase its strength. And then when you look inside the cup, you see the interaction, what's going on. And you say, okay, well, where is this coming from? And so we see that the Gans comes in, and it happens to be, in this case, in cup number 1, the zinc and copper Gans, which brings in the CO2 Gans. And these are the fundamental Ganses that we need to operate in, because they give us our emotional and physical connection. And the copper gives us our connection to our environment here, which is the earth. And then we're going to talk about other cups. But fundamentally, we are still adding amino acid, which is our basic construction here. And when we do that, we also produce water, which is the universal currency and universal solvent on this planet, and what makes life possible. And then when we look at another element that is essential for us, we find that we have a skeleton. And you wonder why a lot of people don't have a backbone. Anyway, I digress. Second cup involves a copper coil and a copper plate. Same thing, magnetical field, gravitational field. Teach this, use this, please. Understand that the relationship between the two cups now establishes an emotional and physical context. And then there's an interaction for both is the same, and both have a magnetical field. This magnetical field is a plasmatic field, does not see the limitations of the glass. So if you're using that to eliminate the virus or to eliminate the effects of the virus, keep these batches apart by at least 1 meter, because very shortly they'll get the gravitational field, which will increase the plasmatic strength, and then you can use it for that purpose. And we know that we can resolve this problem with the virus in very short order, in extremely high efficiency. And we've passed our 1-year anniversary of making this public disclosure. And the thing is that we have to understand that if we were talking about a virus, any virus, it doesn't really matter. They understand the plasma science. They don't need to come to these classes. So all what we need to do is to deplete the energy from the virus and reuse it for other ways. One of the ways we can do that is to convert it to food. So everything has to do with relationships. That's what we're talking about, the relationship between the magnetic and gravitational field forces that create a balance, which we call a MAGRAV. And then we see the limitations of the scientific community, and we see the limitations of the spiritual community. Let's take those limitations off and bring these two together, add them together. And then we see that our understanding on how life is manifest in our cells or in matter. And it all has to do with the conversion of energy. And that conversion is true for light, it's true for our soul. Light has a mass, our soul has a mass. So when we look at the cups of man, we see that a maggrav field is created where you have a magnetical giver and a gravitational taker. And they create a force field, and they create a gravitational field, and then each cup has a soul collectively together. You add the cup of soul, those three cups together have a magnetical field and a gravitational field and a soul. So when someone asks you in simple terms, what is plasma? Tell them it's a kind of energy state, and it's pretty important. And it talks about, our relationship on Earth. It talks about our relationship in space. All you have to do is figure out what your point of view is and figure out what are you talking about the source and what are you talking about the link to your soul. So this is the new discussion, but the big discussion had to do with the limitation of the maximum speed of light, and we found that maximum speed is a false limitation. And why is that being imposed on us for over a century? You see, because the plasma also involves the ethos of the universe, and also the ethos of the universe involves morality, compassion, and courage. These are the essentials for creation. And when we talk about creation, we're talking about creation of life. So if we're talking about the creation of life, we need peace and harmony. And so everyone's anxious to get the universal body enhancement units, because this is the new plasma bound science. It doesn't matter if it's on Earth or in space, and it delivers plasma satisfaction, which is the restoration of emotional and physical vitality. And so all things are working in combination. And today we just talked about the magnetical pushing and pulling, okay? But there is more to talk about. This is all part of the maggrav condition plus the residue. All things are working in combination. Our soul needs to understand we are part of the universe. This is not something that we have to learn about. This is something we are born with. We just have to open up to the energy, yield to the energy coming to us, and allow it to happen. And then once we allow it to happen, we can receive that energy. All we have to do is provide the pattern, and we get the energy. Those are the rules. And so we see that the gift of life is the giving and taking of energy. It comes from creation, co-creation, and procreation. These are all the progressions of creation, and we call that growth. And so what we emit is what we absorb at light speed. And as we found out today, the light does not have direction. It's everywhere. So we had to add another barrier to break down. And so we've added one at the bottom here. Concentrate on the positivity. Two fields come together to form another. This is the manifestation of reality. The formation of any of these fields is a manifestation, and it's the feeding by the plasma that leads to this manifestation. And this manifestation could be non-tangible or tangible, non-visible or visible, plasmatic or physical, dark matter or light matter. And there is a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. Manifestation, whichever it is a form artifact. And now we know that the emotion of presence is also a form artifact of energy in motion. So we are the messengers, and this energy demands peace and friendship. And so when we put this plasma science through the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute into public domain, we are asking for a world peace treaty to be signed with a pen and to be signed with the heart and the soul. because that's where the physical and emotional harmony and vitality comes from. And that is the truth. As knowledge seekers, we find the truth. The truth always comes out. But, you know, can we make a difference? We need to make a difference, because this dynamic plasma is not only within us, it is the universal language throughout. So in order for it to work, this science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on earth. Thank you all so much for allowing me to make this presentation.
Thank you, Alex. I think I'm a bit lost with this term divergence, though. Not sure where I got lost with it, but I'm trying to connect it into the plasma, but I'm not. What is the main point you were stressing? If maybe that would help.
Magnetical
Doesn't know any limit.
is the lowest energy.
Okay.
It's magnetical. It's repulsion. And so it is diverging from the point of origin, and it goes in all directions.
Why did you pick the term divergent?
Mm.
It's in a mathematical expression, it says having no finite limits.
I'll buy that. I accept.
Pertaining or causing divergence. Diverging, differing, or deviating.
As opposed to being devious.
Mm-hmm. Maybe someone else has a clearer understanding than I do. And again, it's not your teaching, it's me not able to receive it.
You do understand it. You just explained it.
Okay. I was just reading a definition that I
read it again, because you know, let's put it this way. In the intro, you played an excerpt from the Knowledge Seekers Workshop, and the words specifically were that you cannot impose your will on somebody else, right?
Okay.
So you can just offer.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that you can't decide who you offer it to. You can direct it, but you can't control it. So
right. That's what I was saying with Jaco and Daniel, that their testimonies or what they've shared with us today will go out and touch someone. It touched us, but I know it'll go out and touch others, but they can't.
But you don't know who.
Who.
Right. Okay. So this is where the broadcast comes. So when the creator is giving the love, which direction is he giving the love to? You see,
all directions.
Yeah. Well, how many planets in our solar system? Are all the planets on the same side of the sun? And then one season, let's say winter, we're on one side of the sun. Then in summer, we're on the other side of the sun. The sun looks the same, except it changes its position in the sky. But in terms of energy and in terms of intensity, it's the same. So the intensity discussion is an earthbound discussion. That's the point. The limitation of light is an earthbound discussion. That's the point. We are not an earthbound society, or not even a society. We're a spaceship institute. So what we're doing is we are answering the physics questions on Earth based on what is going on in outer space, because it's all the same. It's just that we have a different capability here. We have a physical manifestation. So how does that physical manifestation happen? And that's what we're discussing. We're discussing in the Knowledge Seekers workshops the transition from our physicality into our soul level. And in order to do that, we have to elevate into a discussion between the soul of man and the soul of physicality. We don't have to discuss the physicality of man. Discussing the physicality of man is the discussing of the lowest energy state. In other words, one more example. We understand that heat and electricity is the transfer of energy via the electron. The plasma science is the transfer of energy through the proton. The proton is 1,849 times bigger than the electron. The electron is magnetical. Hello, okay? Now you know the direction that we're going.
I'm definitely going to have to review this again. You've sort of lost me a bit here because I haven't heard that term used that much in our plasma.
What term is that?
Divergence.
Well, you know, you've heard it used in our social media.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it as diverting. Divergence.
Well, that's what a dam does, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was a movie called Divergence. Do you remember?
No.
Okay. It was a popular movie.
Okay.
Or maybe the title wasn't Divergence, but some of the people, categories of the people in the movie were classified as divergent. You know, from that aspect of it, in many ways, as knowledge seekers, we are divergent. Okay.
That I can agree, yes.
Okay.
We have all the possibilities available to us, depending on what we choose and what we create.
So, from somebody's point of view, being divergent is a bad thing. And from other people's point of view, being divergent is a good thing. But whatever you are, you have to give first before you could receive.
Would anyone else like to ask Alex a question? I can see I've fallen flat here in a way, but I'll look at it again. It will add to my knowledge, I'm sure.
Well, hello, Mark.
Yes,
dear
dear.
Mark. Namaste.
Yes,
Salam,
dear.
namaste, dear Alex. Thank you for the beauty and totality. You
Hello,
always.
Shweta.
Hello, hello, my dear. And so an enlightenment, always so much love. And I want to say about the Divergent. I have seen the film, and in India there is a big. Well, I am not relating with any religion, but there is an epic book called Ramayana, and in that Ramayana, Sri Ram was the prince that was born. But he actually was an avatar of the several gods, Vishnu and all. And when he decided to be, I will say, a divergent, to born on earth. So all gods have came together and say, "Oh, you are going to be born. You want to be born, and as a divergent, you will go." And we will say the divergent in Maya. Maya means kind of illusion, whether he chooses the facts or the reality, that real, or he will go into the Maya, the illusion. So the divergent he chooses was painful, of course. He knows that when I am going to get birth in the Maya, as a divergent, I will go in the wrong, a kind of not in a position of, he will be conducting as a giver, but still the karma was opposite what he has done. As we say in many ways, many philosophers say, all good person end with bad things. Dies first. Why? Because the divergence is very different. The Maya, they expect the Maya, the divergence is very different, because they do what is good told to us, that you have to be kind to a beggar. Why there is a beggar? You don't understand? Because of you. So that is the way we think that this is the divergence point, this is the point of diverting, what you really think about the point of view, as Alex Skorik always give the knowledge as to what is your point of view, what kind of divergent you are, because we are born, we are choose to be in the intensity of light, and that is a magnitude, a matter, thinness or thickness or whatever, or it goes over as the divergent, or in the Maya, in the illusion, or in the real human nature. We're always connected as the ancient, I will say, very shamans and Brahmans, sannyasis, sadhus, Sufis. They diverged, but they diverged as they given and came within again. They always believed a divergent as a within, the path they follow. I mean, I don't know. I am able to give you the right way to think, because as a divergent is always magnetical, because it appears, it chooses, it works like that. The energy works like that as a magnitude. We can see we choose the path to be a divergent of what and where somewhere else or within. So as we are in the knowledge of the plasma, dynamic plasma, we understand how to divert ourselves again. The divergence to begin, to clear again, completing the circle. We are going from within again, and to be the universal, to realize that we are universal, only to realize we are always. So this divergence in the Maya, in the illusion, we sometimes lost in the magnitude. As the light focuses on us, we are lost. The light cannot see us. And then we appear again, and the light sees us in an intensity that it appears, and it is action to come within. So divergence for me is this way. I don't know, Mark, dear Mark, are you? I mean, what are you able to? I will not say you understand, but I know this is a thought of my what I think divergence is. It is your point of view, how you diverge yourself. This is always a path. This is always a way to follow. And of course,
can I say something?
Oh yes, of course, Jala. Yes.
Hi everyone. I make a notice about why the beggar is a beggar. If you just analyze what Mr. Kass said in the last teaching, the beggar is a beggar because he chose to. We all creator. We all magnets for what we want to be. So he chose to be a beggar.
Yes. No, I just wanted to say that the conducts, the interaction, he's a beggar, you are a rich man, a prince, or a king or a queen, but the interaction creates the light, or there's no light at all, only a residue of something, kind of that. I know that this illusion is created to divert sometimes, and sometimes it goes within. So the beggar is there. Maybe he's chosen to be a beggar, and the prince came. The soul came to be chosen to be a prince. But then, what is the interaction? Because this interaction creates the point of divergence, whether it is the light or it is only a residue that is to be there, kind of like that, in the matter state. And this is only my point of, but you are right. Yeah, the beggar is there because he chooses to be a beggar. But in this physicality, we know we tell about to have the conducts according to the ethos. How can we understand the ethos of the dynamic field of the universal creator unless we understand, we come in balance like that. Because
But-
in a balance,
But you know the one thing they do not know about, or they ignore, that you are a creator.
yes, they ignore. Indeed.
Exactly.
Yes, so, yes, you are the both of the points. You're right. The divergence is here. They do not know. I will call them kind of innocent, or they ignore it. Yes, of course, I agree. I think. Thank you, Jalal. Salam, namaste.
Thank you,
Beautiful
my
teacher you are, and I. This is my my thought. I mean, I have seen because in our tradition there were reincarnations and several hundred thousands of gods taking incarnation as human being and all creatures and feeling the pain, to feel the happiness, to feel the light, and to experience the divergence kind of thing, you know. So this is my thought. I mean, thank you. Thank you for letting me. Thank you so much. Salam, namaste, salute.
And Adrian had left, and I'm glad he's taken a divergence and come back into the meeting. So thank you. Adrian, would you like to say anything?
May I translate in Romanian for him? Adrian, vrei să spui ceva? Poți să...
Da, iubesc ceea ce a spus Sveta și iubesc poziția ei.
He said that he loves very much Sveta and her position too.
Iubesc pe toți oamenii care sunt aici și care sunt cu adevărat în știința creștină.
And he loves very much all the people which are here interested on plasma science, cache science.
Și urăsc mincinoșii.
And he doesn't love, he hates.
Pentru că sunt foarte mulți mincinoși pe aici.
Liars, people which are like Pinocchio. I don't know the correct word in English. Liars? Maybe.
Mulțumesc frumos, iertați-mă că am intervenit.
Yeah, and he said, thank you. I also would like to thanks to Mr. Alex, because I am in love with his teaching as much as I am in love with Mr. Kesh's teaching. And I understand very well this divergence concept. And in this way, I understand how pemetics are created only from magnetical. And these divergent pemetics, they are from magnetical. Two rays are only magnetical, because yesterday after my teaching, because I start to teach using the Mr. Kesh knowledge, Alex knowledge, and Lisa from Australia knowledge. So I put everything together and I have my own view. And after we went to another meeting, also in Romania, but there it was a confusion, saying that pemetics, these two divine rays, one is magnetical and one is gravitational. And I didn't want to create a divergence there and to correct and to say, maybe after I will correct, but I would like to ask you and to clarify for everybody that these two divine rays are only magnetical, because we have magnetical field there at the beginning. I am correct? Mr. Alex?
Is correct you speak. Este foarte bine ceea ce ai spus, te o să traduci tu.
Adrian said that it's correct what I said, and he asked me to translate for him.
Și dacă cineva a descoperit raza gravitațională, vă rog să-mi spuneți și mie.
And if somebody discovers the gravitational ray, just to inform
Și
Adrian.
aceasta este calitatea celor care vor să ducă cuvântul domnului Cash mai departe. Au descoperit raza gravitațională.
And this is a quality of some people which would like to go to transmit to future generations the word of Mr. and the science of Mr. Cash. So
Cum poți să spui asemenea prostie? Cum poți să spui asemenea prostie că se întâlnește o rază magnetică cu o rază gravitațională și interacționează?
And he agreed that is not correct, that magnetical and gravitational ray, they interact and they create plasma.
Eu vă iubesc pe toți care sunteți aici și vă respect din tot sufletul meu.
I love all the people here interested by the knowledge, and I respect all of you.
Inclusiv pe domnul Cash.
Including our Mr. Cash.
Dar trebuie să fim foarte atenți ce ducem în colectivitate și ce transmitem colectivității.
But we have to take care which people we encourage and what we will transmit in the community, and we have to transmit the right information of the science.
Mulțumesc frumos.
Thank you very much.
And I thought, if you can tell Adrian, that I thought the magnetical and the gravitational are basically inseparable.
Crede că magnetic și gravitațional sunt inseparabile.
And it's from your point of observation. If the car is going away from you, it looks magnetical. If the car is coming toward you, it looks gravitational. So it all depends on your point of observation.
Spune că depinde de punctul tău de vedere, de unde, că poate să fie și magnetic, dar să vedem ce spune și domnul Alex. Would you like to listen Mr. Cash and Mr. Alex also?
Just a moment, please. Just a moment. Am înțeles ceea ce a spus colegul nostru. Am o problemă doar cu vorbitul în limba asta, dar o înțeleg perfect.
He understands English, but he can't express himself well in English.
Și atunci, hai să ne uităm un pic, să analizăm ce înseamnă o rază magnetică.
Let's try to analyze what means magnetical ray.
Și să vedem de unde a apărut noțiunea de rază gravitațională.
And from where appears the notion of gravitational ray.
Pentru că această noțiune nu există în cărțile domnului Cash.
Because we didn't find this notion in the book of Mr. Cash. We studied.
Da, putem să inovăm.
We can innovate.
Dar nu putem să postulăm.
But we can postulate.
Pentru că nu noi am învățat și am inventat această știință.
Because we are not the people who invented this science.
Și doar inventatorul are dreptul să postuleze.
And only the innovator has a right to postulate.
Este punctul meu de vedere și îmi cer iertare că mi-am exprimat public.
This is my point of view, and I'm sorry that I had the courage to tell it publicly.
Can you ask him to repeat himself? He's talking nonsense. He has not understood the science at all. Can you ask him to repeat himself?
Poți să repeți încă o dată?
Because what he just explained is not what it is.
Normally.
We talk about a collection of fields which makes a plasma, not the ray of gravity or magnetical.
No. Here.
In a plasma technology, we always strain is a collection of fields which makes a plasma, not a single field, a gravity or magnetical. And when you have a collection of fields, is collection of magnetical and gravitational spectrum of fields.
De acord cu tine în ceea ce ai spus că avem în plasma avem o colecție de raze.
He agreed that in plasma we have a collection of rays.
No, there is a big difference between rays and fields. There's a big difference.
Este o diferență mare între raze și câmpuri.
Pentru că
maybe you have to go and read the book and understand it before you make such a comment. Because to what you said, I understood you have understood nothing about reading the book. Your knowledge is absolutely zero. Even you try to explain it your way. You have right to your opinion, but this is not what the technology of the plasma is. Plasma is a collection of magnetic fields, not one ray or one magnetical or gravitational.
Da, spune că...
That's what I thought with your work. You have not understood the principle of the plasma technology. And what I heard from you is 100% I'm correct, that you have to understand a plasma is a collection of fields, not singularity or ray.
Da, trebuie să înțelegi că plasma este o colecție de câmpuri, nu de...
Am înțeles, oprește. Așa este cum spuneți dumneavoastră, domnul Cheș. Dar foarte multă lume nu înțelege și vin și explică celorlalți oameni că o interacțiune plasmatică este o interacțiune între o rază magnetică și o rază gravitațională, ceea ce dumneavoastră n-a spus niciodată.
Da. Okay, I understood what you said, that but other people just said that plasma is a collection of two rays, one gravitational and one magnetical rays, not fields.
No. Plasma, first of all, plasma is a collection of fields. If you read all the book, because on the other hand, plasma has both magnetical and gravitational. Otherwise, it doesn't become a plasma. Sun is not a sun if it doesn't have both gravity and magnetical. And it's a collection of fields. I've heard him making this comment in a number of teachings, and is this actually misinforming and is carrying on with this misinformation. You have to ask him to go and get educated in the book number 1 completely. And then he says, we all studied it when we understand. People who understand the technology, we support. People who don't understand the technology and pretend to understand, we have to make clear, because I've heard him in a couple of other teachings, and he's totally has not understood the principle of the plasma. And he does not let anybody make any opinion except him in all his work. Even in the Romanian community, he is more or less dictating his way through, and we are aware of it. But you have to go back and study the book. And you have not understood the technology at all, or in a way, you're trying to build the technology or science on the back of Keshe Foundation technology, which to us does not make any sense. If you work as a ray, you talk as a field and collection of magnetic and gravitational field to make a plasma.
I have to translate, Mr. Keshe.
Please translate. He has understood the technology totally the wrong way around, and is forcing his way to the others in the Romanian community that is correct and the way it is. And this has to stop, or tell him to write a book to explain it the way he understands it. But don't misinform what he hasn't understood.
Yes. Mr. Kesh, I was also there, but he didn't say about ray. Other person said about rays.
Yes, but
Yes.
it's a collection of fields.
Yes,
I
collection
listened
of
to-
fields. Yes.
Yeah, I've listened to, and when he says we studied it and it's not there, it's totally, I cannot say anything because we never judge, we don't peer review. But
Yeah.
when you refer to my technology,
Puh.
what we understand is a plasma is a collection of fields.
Yeah, of
Domnul
course.
Mr. Cash, sorry. It's not possible to other people come here and did raise gravitational and raise magnetic interaction și formează o plasmă. Te rog frumos să lumea, că nu...
Even a ray of a gravitational and magnetical rays of magnetical and gravitational make a field that the field itself has a plasma characteristic.
Yes.
It's like a light.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes. Is o magnetical, este o interacțiune magnetică care creează un câmp.
when you have a ray of magnetical and ray of gravitational, which is built of the same thing, yes, you create a plasma of light.
Yes.
You don't make a plasma ball plasma. When you have a collection of fields, then you make a plasma. And in the teachings I've listened in a couple of times, you or whoever in your group, and then you add it to each other, you are misinforming about the whole thing. And this has to be corrected by maybe me, by Alex, that this is only coming through 2 or 3 people in the Romanian community, because they have not understood, and they are bringing a lot of, to me, a nonsense technology or knowledge to build something which doesn't work. If you talk about the ray magnetical and ray gravitational, because it all exists at the same, as we said on this teaching, last teaching, you create a plasma, ray of plasma, a field of plasma. And then it's in the form of a light. It's not in the form of a plasma, as we call it, a ball of plasma. An entity which has gravitational, magnetical, what we call a collection of.
Ai înțeles, Adrian? Traduc? Adrian? Alo?
Am înțeles foarte bine. Respect your lesson, Mr. Cash. Respect. Am un respect foarte mare pentru noastră.
I have a great respect for you, Mr. Cash.
Thank you very much. But the respect doesn't count into it. This is the knowledge which you in Romanian community, you start playing to whatever, maybe you understand different than what I do or what we do as what we call knowledge seekers. And to me, what you're putting together is totally a nonsense. Unless you discovered a new technology in plasma, please write about it that we understand, we have to respect it. But you refer to my technology and then to put something to it, you have the right to do. But to me, what you put across is mixing things together and building something out of it, and it's a lot of nonsense. It does not make sense. If you talk, you see, you cannot bring a ray and then say it's got gravitational as a field, and then call it a plasma as a ball, which is one doesn't work. I've heard 2 or 3 times this comment in background with the Romanian structure, and it's somebody has misunderstood, and that you're trying to bring it out, and it has, to me, it has no room in the understanding of the plasma. It's very wrong. It's not just only wrong, it doesn't make sense. Maybe somebody when has been drunk makes sense to them, but not to the sober man, because it does not apply to the law of the physics in the universe.
Așa este cum spuneți dumneavoastră. Dar haideți să ne uităm un pic și în ochii noștri și în ochii celor care vorbim între noi.
It's like this, Mr. Cash, I agree with you, but let's see in the eyes of each other which are talking.
Și să încercăm să ne percepem între noi.
And to try to perceive between us.
I don't need to, because I'm not arrogant, but what I understand it's a misinterpretation of the knowledge and trying to say it's correct. When you misrepresent the knowledge because you misunderstood or you understand it a different way, then you try to push it and bring doubts, and then I have to go and correct the doubts because you misunderstood. And I've heard this before, and if you have what you say is something you have discovered, everything is whatever, publish it, talk about it, yes. But to the knowledge of the science we have, what you put across does not make sense. And then trying to dismiss everything that what it goes. We had many people like you who done this, and then to put it back right, it took us months. And that's the reason I stopped it straight away.
Domnul Cash, așa spuneți dumneavoastră și așa credeți dumneavoastră.
This is maybe your perception.
So we close it at this. You take your perception somewhere else because it doesn't make sense here. Very correct.
Domnul Cash, ați vorbit de condensator de 20
and please do not bring this perception into the Romanian community and push it because you don't allow anybody else in that community to speak. It's a total, I listen to it. We are very close with the Romanian community. We know what's going on. And this has to stop. This we see now in only in Romanian community, 2 or 3 of you have started this, and you think now you do something with it. If you have such an understanding, take it somewhere else and do it, because what you say is totally misinformation. Okay. Or go and read the book and come back and do it, because we read the book, we did 2 or 3 of you, whatever, have come together, and all the systems you have made is a copy of what the Keshe Foundation head office has released, and then you try to say something has been done. We try to encourage people to come out with new ideas. That's how we encourage Alex or Jalal or whatever. But when we see wrong information, wrong understanding, and trying to propagate it across the whole technology, I don't allow it. You have a knowledge, take it somewhere else. This is not the place to discuss it, because I listen to you and the background in the Romanian community, and this is somehow you build it up. You're 100% correct, but there is no room in Keshe Foundation for it, because it doesn't go with the knowledge. It doesn't fit the knowledge. Allow other people in the Romanian community who understood to explain. Do not shut them up. Then you understand. They tell you you're totally wrong too. And if you have he understands English very well. You don't need to translate.
Yes.
He understands English absolutely inside out. And we've seen people who came like this, and then they start dividing and dividing because of their own misunderstanding. And then it goes back to spreading things the wrong way. And then somebody said, we try from Morning Keshe Foundation to stop nonsense people. It becomes part of it that we don't have to work later on to correct it.
I want to say only moment, Mr. Cash. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
you very much indeed.
Thank you for your message. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stop this process which you have started I've attended without you knowing in the background and I watched the Romanian chat very closely, and we see 2 or 3 of you have started this, and you think you've taken over. Allow the other people in Romanian group explain what you have misunderstood. And you're trying to expand on something which has no meaning in the world of the plasma as we know it and in the natural process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fish.
Thank you very much. Please allow in your community other people to talk, because you and couple of other people have taken over the whole thing and it gets dictatorship, and even in your groups, you don't allow other people to have a position. This is not the way Cash Foundation works.
Dar
Thank you very much.
Mr. Cash, thank you.
Yeah.
Am o mare problemă. De când a apărut o rază gravitațională?
I have a problem, a big problem. I don't understand from where appears gravitational ray.
Gravitational ray comes from the return of the magnetical.
Ai înțeles, da? Raza gravitațională vine de la întoarcerea celei magnetice.
This comes from the misrepresentation of mainly from Einstein, that in so many ways afterwards wrote that the light cannot be bent. But light itself is a collection of magnetic fields, or if it's as a field or as a what we call particle, and at certain point, due to lower speed or interaction, returns back. And because when it returns back, because it has a common denominator center of magnetical centrifugal point, it becomes back to center, and in that process gathers for itself, it becomes gravitational. Creation started with magnetical.
Înseamnă că schimbăm un pic paradigma care am învățat-o doar dumneavoastră și înseamnă că apare o noțiune nouă în această știință, raza gravitațională.
Translate.
So maybe we change the science and we have a new notion now.
No, we don't have. No. Gravitation always has been understood as in the old science, as well as modern science, that is a return of the same field. It's not that something just where you pull something in. Or if you are of the same strength, you bring back in line with a field which comes to it as a bigger plasma dimension, because it is what we call spherical. All the rays which have led to creation always is the reflection of themselves coming back to the source. But in the same process, if you find other rays of the same strength, they collectively come back to the source. In the future, we show gravitational fields which are much bigger than the magnetical original. These are what we call field loops. It's a loop which completes itself back to the center of the gravity. We see them sometimes in the South Pole very clearly as a field loop. Some pictures have been taken from them, but nobody can explain it.
Thank you.
But this is in a discussion of the future when knowledge is more mature to come. This goes back. Let me explain to you something which maybe answers you very easily. This goes back to what just Alex brought up. Alex just brought something up which we never go to it in the world of the science of the plasma. Then it might explain to you something. Acceleration. Yeah. If you read what acceleration is defined here, it's a change of velocity. In a plasma technology, we don't have change of velocity. So acceleration becomes by change of the magnetic field strength. Then the time zero comes into operation. Then you understand what is accelerated as a strength of the magnetic field. The lower strength pulls the upper strength to attract itself, to gain itself energy. If we redefine the acceleration, and it's written here, instead of being change in velocity over a change in time, this is in a matter state. If we define acceleration in the speed of magnetic field, it comes from change in the strength of magnetic field, not change in the velocity. Then you understand zero time exists, you don't ever have a time because it's instantaneous. And then all the equations we have, like as Alex referred to, E equal mc squared, has a totally different meaning. I never go into the details of these things because we already have enough problem with the scientists, with the basic plasma, let alone explaining the speed of the travel or acceleration. That's why you can travel from Earth to Moon in seconds, because there is no velocity. You change what we call the strength of the field. The strength of the gravitational, you become pulled in. The strength of the magnetical, you get thrown out. These are the things in the future we really define in a plasma condition. Then we understand we cannot have a plasma as field, as rays in a gravitational dimension or magnetical dimension. It becomes collective because you need two different strengths to be able to have that velocity, to be able to gather energy. This is why I never release formulas, because the formulas, if we start writing the formulas in the world of the plasma technology, the whole present physics is down the chute coming to space technology. Because every fuel, every rocket is calculated on these bases. That's why a lot of people have a problem to understand the plasma technology and understanding of how we make gravitational magnetical. We don't create acceleration. We create change of magnetic field which already exists in the universe. We don't need to generate it. We just jump into it. And then the whole gravitational and magnetical field makes totally different story. And that's why even when Alex goes and shows E equal to mc squared is zero doesn't work, because Einstein made a lot of assumptions to get to this. When you speak scientifically, I can give you everything in a scientific manner, that's what it is. But when you start speaking the way you do, then I put different information in. You see what you tell me is total, doesn't fit into the nature of the universal work. In a way, if you look at it, a magnetical field as it goes is like what we call Chinese firework. You see fires drops out from it till it goes to the top. Those drops don't fall. There are loops of plasmas of the fields which they create their own gravitational falling back by their speed. It never diminishes. And a simple explanation of acceleration in a world of plasma, now you see what you said doesn't fit at all. That's why I tell you, what you tell us is irrelevant, because acceleration in plasma technology, in space technology, is change of not speed, not change of velocity, but it's a change of magnetic field strength, which has no velocity, has nothing to do with velocity, and it's got nothing to do with time. That's how we travel zero time. This is what I said, the new technology which we'll bring out of Iran will change the course of all this knowledge. But just give us time. I can go from velocity of 1 to 1 billion by just changing the strength of the field. I don't need to change anything else. No speeding up, no burning. Just jumping into a field of higher order, which is in the magnetic field, is very easy because full spectrum of it exists in the universe. Now you understand what I tell you haven't understood properly?
Aveți dreptate. O să mă uit cu mai mare atenție la câmpurile magnetice de acum încolo.
You are right, Mr. Kesh. I have to be more careful and to look at magnetical fields starting from nowadays.
Pentru că dacă vrei să faci o unitate de transport, ai nevoie de câmpuri magnetice, n-ai nevoie de cele gravitaționale.
If you want to make a unit of transportation, you need magnetical fields, not gravitational fields.
No, you need both. You need both. At the moment when we want to reach Earth from Moon, we don't work with only gravitational. We always create a balance of the two and continuous conversion of one to the other. Otherwise, you get stuck halfway in the middle.
Ai înțeles? Trebuie să traduc, Adrian?
The space technology, when you speak about gravitational magnetical, you don't change your speed. You exchange between their strength and you exchange between gravitational magnetical at the same time. This is why most of you cannot fly. And when we go to the flight system, we fly immediately because you have not understood the principle of the space technology in the space of the plasma. We don't break when we get to the moon. By controlling the gravitational magnetical, we convert. That's why we don't burn when we go in. When shuttle comes in, you get your acceleration wrong, you get the angle of entry wrong, you burned out. In the plasma technology, you convert 4 things at the same time, but you have to watch what you're doing. Otherwise, you get repelled by the moon's gravitational and magnetical more than the absorption of the attraction of its gravity. There's much more into the space technology than what we thought, but we just touched what we call scratch the surface that people understand. But when it comes to true velocity and true plasma technology, you're still working with matter state and trying to fit it into plasma state, and that doesn't work.
Ai înțeles, Adrian, că...
Mulțumesc frumos. Thank you, Mr. Kesh,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But please do not push this misunderstanding as there is something wrong. You have not understood the principle. I just showed you a little light into the knowledge of what is still hiding from public. We don't put in public.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And eu vă cer iertare pentru că v-am provocat în această seară și să știți că am făcut-o cu un scop.
I apologize because I challenged.
No, there is no need for apology. No, don't apologize. Just understand the technology and allow other people who try to explain the terms and terminology. Because the way It has to be, we are all open to technology. We are open. And I listen to a lot of teachings by a lot of people without you knowing. I come through the back doors. We sit in different names. And I sometimes listen to people. And there is a lot of, all the teaching is not correct. All the teaching is not perfect. But when we see a group of people start thinking they start a new thing and they discover between their own mistake, glorifying it. In the past, we used to let it go. Now we don't do. Even in different organizations, Keshe Foundation, we do the same. Because it's harder to correct it later than to stop it moving. And this misunderstanding has started between 2 or 3 people in the Romanian community. And we stop it before it goes any further.
Okay, Mr. Keshe, thank you. Romanian community.
Hopefully we see you in July in the conference.
Okay, thank you. Romanian community is here for you. It's not for me, it's not from Salomea, it's not from Jalal, it's not
No. It's for all of us. Keshe Foundation is a collective organization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about this, Alex, but I think you learned something extra.
Well, I opened a can of worms, and I thank you very, very much for clarifying. I've wanted to talk about this for a long time, and obviously I hit a nerve today, and but
No, you didn't touch a nerve. It's just that when there is a misrepresentation, you're correct when you speak about the matter state, but when you speak when it's misrepresented in a different way, we have to stop it, because in the past we used to let it go. And I listened to your teaching. It's beautiful how you present it, but it's mainly on a matter state.
And Mr. Keshe, that is one of my limitations. I don't have access to classified information or lab or any research. I'm just Joe Muck and Futch here in Canada.
But I hope you learned something new.
Oh, well, I sure did. And I'm deeply appreciate your intervention today.
Thank you.
As always.
There's
no problem there. I'm just trying to contribute as best as I can.
I think we need to thank Adrian to make a mistake that Mr. Keshe come in and correct and adding. Thank all of you.
I have a comment about Shweta, and I want to thank you very much for your comments. First of all, I have always wanted to tell you this. I'm going to take this opportunity right now. I appreciate the fact that you're using the terminology in your daily dialogue. And this is especially visible in the One Nation, One Planet teachings that you've been doing. And it's something that I've always wanted or pushed for, and that is to use the right terminology in the right context. You know, it's no point using 10-cent words if you don't understand the meaning that is behind it, and you are doing a marvelous job. There's been some mention of Bruce Lipton in the background. You know, the application.
I'm not seeing any microphones opened, Alex. I don't know where that's coming from.
I will say thank you, my dear Alex. Thank you for your teaching, your enlightenment. Thank you. I am even, we are all equally enlightened ourselves because of this teaching. And thank you so much. I am able to speak these words. Even I am able to. And thank you. I surrender to your love, your light, your kindness. Thank you so much. So much.
And I appreciate that greatly. You have no idea. I'm saying this in matter state to reaffirm. But the thing is that's most particularly gratifying is your statement today, because the Eastern knowledge of the religion and spirituality is something that I am really totally weak of. And this is normal as a North American. But I appreciate your input on that, and it was so gratifying to hear you relate to that and enlighten us in that regard, because for a lot of North Americans, they don't understand religion because they don't understand well, they don't understand Buddhism. They don't understand. To us, the contention is that the Bible is the most read book, and it's not. And the Tao Te Ching is the most read book on this planet, and it's only 40 pages. So and it's 3 millennia old, so it precedes Confucianism. But nevertheless, it has wisdom, and this wisdom transcends all languages, and it's universal, and it comes with us when we are born. It's just that, for some reason, the Western culture does not want to implement this logic in our society. And it's okay if you go along to get along, but if you decide to say, well, I want to bring peace and harmony to this planet, and most of us, as was mentioned earlier on, have difficulty even doing that within our own family. And so the importance of the cups of life really comes to the foreground. And two things that I do in the teaching, and that is, one is repetition. And the reason for that is because of that's how growth works, and that's how memory works. Because as this rotating field, this rotating plasma field manifests itself into physicality, it does it the same way. And so that is how memory works. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason, it gives me an opportunity to do things in different contexts. So you hear the same words in different contexts, and you understand how to use those words. Use it in normal dialogue, just as you would use any other dialogue. And the other thing is to take away the mysticism from the plasma science, because we are all plasma beings, and that is one of the huge, most one of the biggest revelations for me. And we all have obstacles in taking that over. Thank you.
I just want to thank Adrian and Salomia and Mr. Kesh and Alex for bringing this more to our attention, and the answers are found in book 1. So I'm sure I've missed more than I absorbed out of all the books, but as Rick said, you go back to basics, and Alex just said, you keep reviewing and you keep understanding, and that's what we do with the Knowledge Seekers workshops and so on. And everything around this foundation, because it appears and seems so foreign to us, but it's not. It's quite natural. And we just have to get over that hump of whatever is blocking us from achieving our understandings. And everyone is different, and everyone understands slightly different, but thank you for the clarification. Even though it might have hurt a little, I think it was well worth it. And thank you, Adrian, and I hope you'll join us again.
And me, I have to thank to Mr. Kesh, because he put a light for many people here, including me. And I hope in the future then he will put more light and clarify more for all the people. Because we don't need to to misunderstand your science. Will be a pity after to correct. We have to understand well from the very beginning. To correct, as you said, it's not easy. So it's better to understand well. That's why I came to see the teaching of Mr. Alex, and I learn what Lisa teach, and from away, from back. But it's not easy. I have to. My wish is to understand at once, but it's not at all very easy because it's something new. I understand very well about the soul because all we have soul, but book 1 and 2, I try to study maybe on my own because it's not easy. And when you study in your own, maybe you understand better that in a group. You need silence and concentration. And if I have some not clarity,
should I
can
tell you
ask.
how to do it? Should I tell you how to do it?
Yes.
Okay. You
Please.
take a book and you go into the room. You leave all your knowledge behind the door and you come inside the room and you read the book without any background knowledge.
Yes, I know this. We are like a cup. And in order to put water in a cup, you have to
Empty.
To have the cup without anything, a vacuum there. Even in a vacuum, you have something. Yes. So, but anyway, I am happy because I start to understand, and I made in the beginning comparison with other sciences and physics, I mean, but plasma science is very, very different from what we learn at school. Complements this. It's an addition. And because it's not measurable, it's not so easy to understand, but we try to do it. With the help of the Creator, he will enlighten our soul, and we will understand at the soul level. Thank you.
Mark, can you hear me now?
Yes, Gail.
Oh, good. Okay, no, I switched back to my tablet.
You want to tell us how to grow hair? No, I noticed you put something in there about kelp, or was it seaweed?
Yes, because somebody was complaining about white hair, and sometimes if you eat, the seaweed kelp, make sure it's from a good source. It actually helps. Probably the iodine, some balancing of the thyroid, I think. Yeah, I just have a question for, I guess it would be Alex. I was so happy to hear Mr. Kesh talk about, to me, everything starts off with the magnetical, let's say rays. Everything is magnetical rays. And then what happens, because they're in motion and all the rest of it, then those fields are attracted. But one of them can I don't know if you want to call it from the one end, can circle around to the other and become gravitational. Now, I don't know who was teaching that particular one, but it's been sticking in my head because I couldn't figure out how could one do it. Is it correct that one can circle around and then one end is magnetical repulsing, and then it circles around and is gravitational going in?
Have you seen the cat or dog chase its tail?
Yes.
Such a great question, Gail. Such a great question. So why aren't more people asking that question? Okay, because No, the thing is that when you look at the cover of this particular book, you see that the two plasma fields are different in magnitude, and they have to be different. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why the North Pole is considered the emitter and the South Pole is considered the absorbers, because there is a difference. There's a slight difference, and many times Mr. Kesh has reinforced that particular notion. So that difference is slight, but it's enough to create a flow. So the question then becomes, if the energy is emitting from the North Pole, and that being the North Pole, they are all of the same polarity, so they are repelling. And this is how, from the North Pole, the point of the North Pole, it flows right around the planet. So if it's diverging at the North Pole, and those rays are magnetical or negative, how is it possible for them to be converging at the South Pole? And it's been confounding to me that science has, never really explained that. I mean, that's such an obvious question, isn't it? I mean, that's why you're asking that question. It's such an obvious question, and they're not explaining it. And invariably, they come with the answer is, I don't know. And, for us lay people.
Do you want me to answer you?
Oh my God. I relinquished the floor. Do you want to wait screen?
No. Let me explain to you. It's very simple to understand it. When you throw a stone up in the air, it reaches a point that it cannot radiate anymore. Then it comes back. If you calculate its acceleration as in your teaching, the closer it gets to the source where it was propelled from, it has a higher speed. It has a higher force because it's gathered all these energies coming much faster to the point of interaction. With the magnetical fields, when they reach the point that the field strength cannot or interacts with the environment that is overwhelming their position or their interaction, they come back. But when they come back to another stone that the mass they went, they gather more fields from their environment because they have a connection field with the other fields in the environment. When we throw a stone, we get a stone back. When we throw a stone, we get a mountain back. When it comes to gravity, that's why it's bigger, because it's not just what you call has a resistance and it stays the same. It has no resistance. It gathers more of in its environment, which are of the same strength to itself. And that's why there's a difference between a gravity or a field environment and a matter state. If you go back to the teaching, we say why, when we get the fields going through the South Pole, they appear much stronger at the North Pole. Because within the center of the Earth, there are other fields which are given up by other elements or materials in there, which are the strength of the field of the gravity which came in, they add to it, it piles up. It's like fueling it more. And that's why magnetical goes out faster and we see a higher heat. It's the same thing, but when it comes to a gravity return, it does the same thing. It gathers more fields, it becomes heavier, it becomes more powerful. That's why the gravity is stronger at the center of where you actually propelled it. In defense technology, we create these kind of systems, but we actually pulse out gravity fields. We don't call that magnetic field. It's a specific, what we call space technology. Because when we send a pulse of gravity, whatever is on the way, it gets pulled into it. It literally makes a 0 point. And that's why you get more gravitational fields get stronger as they come in, because on the way back, they are connected to the other field of strength that they just merge into. And they come back to their own source because they have a point of reference. Return to the sender. Because the source has an embedded code field of strength that connects it to it. And this is where the old science went totally wrong. We can literally, in the technology, if we understand, if there is a meteorite that we know we cannot change it, we can reposition the Earth by pulling its gravitational field in a slightly different direction. This is what happens to it as it's getting closer to the sun anyway. That's why it accepts a different orbital, what we call diameter, as it every time travels. Because it's absorbing more in the field of strength from its environment. That's why the masses get more. If you look at the different planetary system, when they entered, they are a big giant gas because they have no mass. They cannot be pulled. As it gathers mass and it becomes a matter state of, the sun pulls it in because now it has a fixed position absorption. That's why we put a mass on top of us. That's why one of the best things you can do when you go to the mountains, you see they cut the mountain on the side, or you see hills cut, have a look. Then you see how much we've been pulled. The science of geology is not just the layers, it shows the pull of the gravity of the, what we call inertial mass, which is added to. Our magma is continuously increasing because it can hold certain mass. It's like when you walk on a swamp, on a wood. Depends how much pressure you put on the wood is how much you go deeper in the swamp. That mass on the top, which we are converting from the fields of the universe or solar system, or the sun, is putting pressure on the magma. So the magma inside is growing by mass of what is on top of it, which is absorbed from the top. And this itself increases the gravitational field of the Earth, or what you want to call...
Mr. Kesh, I didn't read your book. I have just a simple question.
Yes, but scientifically, I explained to you what is there. You don't need to read the book.
I just muted you for interrupting. I'm sorry about that, but would you allow Mr. Kesh to finish, please?
In the world of plasma technology, you don't think about the matter state. You always think in the plasma state, interaction of the field state. So when you throw a mass in a matter state, you get the same mass back. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I think she muted herself. She's not hearing us.
No. So in a way, the simplest way to understand is it's not a stone. It's in return a gravitational field, which is the field itself returning, absorbs other fields from its environment. So it becomes heavier. It becomes bigger plasma mass volume strength by the field strength. not by the plasma strength. If we get plasma strength gravitational, it just, if it comes to Earth, it just blows the Earth up. It's just like getting hit by a rocket, a massive field energy. These are minute field strength, which they get heavier. And by the law of physics, why gravitational always comes and goes out is because the center of the planetary system, like Earth, they're like generators. They add to the higher strength zone. With the gravity, they come in from the lower strength zone collection. It's correct that depends where you stand, but in that position to stand, if you look at it as a car which is driving through a traffic light, depends where you are. As we say, if it's coming to you, it's magnetical, it's going gravitational. The fuel tank of the car, from where it leaves you, from what you absorb till it passes you, when you observe that it's gone, the fuel tank is less because fuel has been consumed to pass you. But in the plasma technology, it's totally different. As it passes you, it absorbs some of the energy of fuel into it. There has more fuel on the gravitational side. Than the magnetical side. But you think it has more fuel on the magnetical side because now it's going to the next destination. But at the same time, the car itself is radiating more fields out to be able to absorb itself to have a fuel for the next one. And in the system itself adds to the field strength because it's like Earth in a plasma condition. The knowledge of the plasma in space technology is totally different. You have to think in many dimensions. And you have to understand that your stone you throw up is gathering energy from its environment as it comes to you. It's not a stone. If the stone was 10 grams you threw up, you're getting a stone 20 grams back. But at the same time, your magnetical is not thrown a 10 gram stone, it's a 20 gram stone on the magnetical, but getting the energy from gravitation. It's a cumulative energy transfer from both fields, magnetical and gravitation. But the magnetical field always have a resistance force ahead of it, where gravitational field have a pull field strength because it cleans itself in front, it clears most of the things which are matching it. In a way, it's like a vacuum cleaner cleans to itself as it comes. But of the lower order, not of the higher order. Where in the magnetical, we give up the higher order and there is no conversion. As it's going through the plasma, all the fields of the plasma, all the magma of the plasma of the Earth, all the center core of the Earth have residual fields which matches and they add into it, they just pile it in. Then you understand why we have a higher strength at the North Pole than the South Pole. And all the fields in the magnetical are connected to the gravitational because they feed each other. And that's why in that connection, to be kept complete, we create what we call the shell, what we call the atmosphere. Because the fields of the gravitational have a field strength common denominator with the magnetical, because they came from the same source. That's their origin, the center of the earth. So they make a loop. Doesn't matter how far they go from this planet in the solar system, somebody sees our planet somewhere in the universe. So it means our field even reaches that part, but at the same time it's connected to the gravitational field, which pulls it back, which if you've seen it, you find a match. By finding a match, you add to it, you convert it back to me, which becomes the gravitational of yours. If you think in a world of the present science, you have a radar. But the radar goes till it hits something, otherwise you don't see it. Magnetic fields are the same. Magnetically, they go till they find a matching field strength that by returning it, that becomes the gravitation of itself. Otherwise, they carry on going. Nobody sees it. They are not aware of it till you find matching point. If there is no creature in the universe or position in the universe that can be of the same strength of the magnetic field of the Earth, they will not see it. That's why the universe is so transparent to us, but in reality, it's a solid wall. If you want to calculate every strength of every field of every, what we call a spectrum of the magnetic field, gravitational magnetic field. And I thought many of you should have understood this if you work with nanomaterial. Then we understand how much we add into the knowledge by understanding a combination of the fields, not singularity of the fields. And understanding when you have a field, you have a plasma, be it like a light, then it gathers fields to itself. It absorbs on its path the fields which are of its own matching strength. Even magnetical fields, for them to radiate, they have to find a magnetical field of their own that they can diverge, as you said, to different dimensions and directions. The magnetical fields, that's how they pull themselves to different dimensions. We can still see gravitational fields if we are on the path, or we give some energy of the same strength to them. In the future, when we create systems, you see a magnetical and gravitational of the same system next to each other as a field. Then you understand why gravity is always heavier, but it's heavier of the lower field strength, where magnetical is heavier on the higher field strength because it has corrected. But in essence, the seed of the two is the same. I hope I could explain it in a very simple way.
Mr. Kes, sorry to bother you. I didn't hear a lot of your teaching because my sound is not working good. I have a question. Is there any condition between magnetic and gravitational? There is any vacuum condition?
You mean connection or condition?
Condition or connection?
It's a big difference.
Big difference.
Big difference. There is a connection because one is a residual of the other in common strength or in common denominator strength of the magnitude, order of magnitude. They are always connected. The reason for it is that any ray which is emitted from anywhere in the universe always has had to have its field strength matching that it pulls into it, what we call gravitation. We don't have any rays in the universe as such which have no source. It's one of more or less impossibilities of the world of creation. In a way, if we have, we say that we have no connection to the Creator, and that does not exist. A lot of mistake when we go deeper in the work of Einstein, a lot of problem because of him has been created. Misrepresenting the knowledge in a way of the matter state, and then when you want to teach plasma, does not fit. Does not fit. The equation of what we saw, energy is equal to mc squared, is one of the biggest problems the physicists of the plasma can ever encounter. Because gravity has no mass unless it interacts. If you read the book number 1, it tells you what a mass is. Unless its interaction with its magnetical. And then if it's of the same strength of the magnetical as gravitation, in a part of its spectrum, not in all of its spectrum. We don't go deep anymore into the teaching on the physical side of the what we call plasma technology. But these are things which we don't teach first. People cannot understand, and partially is considered that people understood, or some of the knowledge seekers already have understood.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just to try to explain. We don't discuss these things, we don't explain, because a lot of it goes into the deep space technology, which, if we go into it, will create more problem for us than before.
Yeah, understood. I have experience a little bit. I shared before, so that's why I understand there is something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Kesh? This is Ed.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the difference between magnetical and gravitational just the difference in strength of the ray in relation to its core programming, where it first came out from?
I don't understand.
You talked about that the magnetical ray, when it comes out, it has a certain core strength. That's why it always returns.
Yes.
Is the reason it is magnetical or gravitational because of the strength of that is higher or lower than that core programming that it came from?
The way to look at it is very simple. If something is magnetical, it must have found a match somewhere that is going to. No field in the universe moves in any direction unless it has found a position of the match to move into. You understand?
Yes, very much.
So you have to have a position that you're going to, and this makes you a magnetical entity. You understand?
So yeah,
in that process, we look at how things turned up to be and how they are according to where it's going to. And this is part of the understanding of the space technology.
so when
Where
it gets to that,
what has attracted this light or this entity to go to? You understand? So it's not that this just comes out and is what we call in English nilly-willy goes. Something has attracted it. You understand?
yes, you told me this a number of weeks ago when I asked you what changed the light into a light rather than a plasma. It was a matching field strength somewhere in the universe that caused it to want to go there. And I understand that. So when it gets there, does it goes through the gravitation, the fields of the entity which it was attracted to, and it gets added to?
We do not know because not all of it goes to the same entity. Part of it goes to that entity because no field transfers all of its energy to one point in the universe. You understand? There is always something left of the origin. That's why we have the expansion of the universe.
Okay, I got to think on that one.
Yeah, because we think we give everything, but in fact, we don't give nothing. We hold on to most of, but what we leave is enough for the entity to survive.
Well, the source of my question was, you indicated that the magnetical goes until it interacts, but then it always returns to its source, and so then it becomes gravitational to its original source. And I wondered if the interaction with the entity that it went to.
Let me explain to you. Let me explain to you in a very simple way. You know the slingshot?
Yeah.
We use a slingshot to throw a stone. With the gravity, the slingshot is the magnetical, but when you throw the slingshot, in your slingshot, you have already connected elastic to the back of your stone before you send it out. You understand?
Okay. Yeah.
And this elastic will pull it back to itself again. But in the process of pulling back, it has let's say honey on it. It attracts more other bits on the way back.
Okay.
It gains field strength from its environment, but it's a convergence, or what we call, in a way, it throws everything out, but at the same time as it's throwing out, it's adding to itself when it comes back of the lower order, lower strength.
Okay. Thank you.
This we do, especially in a plasma reactors technology, is one of the cornerstones of the motion. And in many teachings, if you listen or you heard before, always refer to it. We slow down and we get to the point when we get to the moon. It's not that we put a brake down. We just change the gravity to the magnetical, but the plasmatic gravity magnetical. This is why we always come as a collection of fields, not a singularity of the fields.
I think we may bring this public teaching into our deciphering laboratory in the private teachings, so we can unwind it a bit more.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Kesh, a question about protoplasm or single-celled organisms. Is that a misnomer then? That they're not single-celled, but they're a collection of fields within one cell, what we consider to be a cell?
Of course.
And this is one of the reasons that medicine has not been able to explore the inside of a cell other than, you know, basically cytoplasm, nuclei, and mitochondria.
Yeah, but even that cell is a collection of different plasmas. Single cells react, interact. They have
Well,
emotion.
They do move and they do digest and they have a direction.
Yeah, but in a way, they're a single plasma. If you explore your ganses, single ganses, you'll see the same thing. They're dynamic, they absorb energy from their environment, but they have, you see, the single cells are grown in a specific conditions. If you change their environment, they do not stay single cell. If you change the gravitational magnetic environment of them, they open up or they absorb energy from the others. This is a part of the work of the plasma. And when you're a single cell, you're a collection of fields, not, or in a way, you're a collection of plasmas.
The collection of fields being the plasma.
In a way, but they create their own, what we call miniature plasma inside the cell. You see, when you're a single cell, you're like a planet. A planet is a single cell. It gives fields, it takes fields, and it survives, and it has a heartbeat. Any system, even like the sun, a star is a single cell. But the dimension of what it carries inside it, what it manifests itself on, depends what its outside environment has allowed it to grow. If you change the environment of a single cell, most of it becomes double cells or quadruple cells, because it absorbs more energy, or it just busts open because it gets so much energy that it cannot, or gives so much energy that it diminishes to a small size. No one has ever tested a single cell by change of fields around them, outside them. Not material, but the fields, and then you see the change.
So growth then could be interpreted to be an accumulation of mass.
Accumulation of the fields which create mass. If you read book number 1, when I explained what is the mass and what is the what do you call weight, then you understand it easy.
Well, if you're absorbing more light, you're absorbing more mass, and that is changing the environment, or that is changing.
Not necessarily. That is true maybe in the matter state, but not in the plasma state.
Oh, you mean then it becomes catalytic?
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Well,
understand?
you know, when you have a consistency of the logic, then you know that's why we've done thousands of hours of teaching. Thank you very much. I didn't expect to open up. Well, I did expect to open up a can of worms, but
But it's not a can of worms, it's a can of knowledge.
this is a barrel of monkeys.
Depends what do you expect from this barrel.
Oh, you know what? I expect beauty.
Yeah, but we have to understand the science. This is the problem. When, and at the same time, do not mix it between matter state and the plasma state. The biggest problem is when the two gets mixed and you try to explain one another. Our plasma physicists in the future will have the same problem because now they want to explain in the matter state. Now you explain matter state in the plasma, the reverse will be harder. It'll be much harder.
So if someone like myself puts some plasma water in the gas tank, am I mixing the matter state and the plasma state together? And is that
Yeah.
plasma picking up energy as I'm driving around? Is that what is extending the energy of the gas?
You know, some knowledge seekers years ago start putting gas in the tank and they saw a lot of differences. The original knowledge seekers, the early ones, because they were too enthusiastic to see things, but they never understood what they did. But they actually created a very funny condition that they mixed the matter and the plasma together, and going through their cars, they created gravitational fields. And the cars were doing more mileage for the same fuel tank because they were reducing the weight of the car. And they never understood.
But if you were just using it in the gasoline with nothing else there, let's say I didn't have any plasma water in there, I didn't have anything in the cigarette lighter, nothing in the tires, would it add energy to the gasoline? Would it pick up fields as you're driving, as you were just describing?
No. It doesn't add, in a way. It's a very double-edged knife, I call it. What it does is that as your plasma goes through the engine, as it goes through the exhaust, as it goes through the system, part of it converts into nanoplasma structure, which then, because of the high speed, especially in your motors and in some of the rotating parts, you create what we call a plasma state condition, where the car will interact with the field of the Earth. And then, yes, you convert the fields, what we call the GANs, into the fields, but not into a fuel. Big difference.
The same happens when you add GANS water into the tires.
You create a new dynamic structure.
Well, we also wanted to see what the tailpipe emissions would be after the fact, and the fact that you could take a polluting vehicle and make it almost absence of hydrocarbons and nitrous gases is what was confusing to us, because we didn't have an idea of how it interacted with the matter state in that respect.
There's a lot of what I call there's a need to understand how your ganses are created and how they interact in the matter state, in your fuel system, in your body system, with your batteries, because what they call the fields pass your ignition system, pass part of electrical system, and these go back into the battery. And then they become additional energy which come back in as a feeder. When you deal with a plasma in your car, it's not just a fuel which goes into the tank. The energy plasma goes through your electrical system too. In some of the cars, it goes even to the body of the cars. We've seen cars with the rust having no rust, just by putting the fuel in. The same processes with nanocoat in what you call maglev systems.
Yeah, because there's been, if people who are car aficionados, like of course us, we're the four-wheel race, we noticed long time ago that cars that were made in like the Europeans, in Britain and such, they used what was called a positive ground battery, and the North Americans used what was called a negative ground battery. And so cars in Europe, they wouldn't really suffer from the rust condition. And it's almost like the polarity of the battery determined how the body and the earth and the moisture interacted. It was almost like it swapped polarities. And so we looked at that for many years, trying to figure out how we could utilize that. And so when the maglev for the car came along, that's what we struggled with, is that by this time we were struck with only negative ground batteries and never really got to experiment much with the positive and see if that would have made any difference with respect to I don't know if it's like how you look at the sensorial line between the two halves of the pulsation, but whether it gave it a different effect as it was like the neutral of the matter.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you remember, they used to earth the cars in different way. The connection wasn't about which way was the negative. The connection comes where the car was earthed to its body. You understand?
Instead of, you mean like with relation to the boot or
yeah.
And
or
that was oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Or if you earth it to the front of the car. And how that earth connection was done. Did you, for example, if you had a painting, if you had a scratch on where you put it, that you went directly to the metal, you saw a different result than if you just put your connection to the paint of the body. You understand? Because you never reached the matter state partially.
Well, that's kind of where it was going with regard to how we used to use generators and then we switched to alternators, but yet with the generators, we were able to increase efficiencies by using the atmospheric, I want to say, plasma that exists, where you were able to tap into the hydrogen almost of the atmosphere to improve efficiencies. And I'd hope that we could continue on down that path, and maybe we will in the future, once everything gets sorted out, when we try to look at more efficient ways to power things that can utilize the atmosphere, which is so and non-polluting in a way. So thank you. I have one more question. Do you have any opinion on the new president of Iran and what's going to occur, Mr. Kesh?
Absolute silence at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank everybody for allowing me to make a presentation today. This has been extra special. And Mr. Kesha, I really can't thank you enough. This has been the North American Corona International Team Meeting. I'm going to sign off to you, Mark. I'm sure there's a lot more to cover, and I'm going to hand it over to you. Thanks, everybody.
So it appears there's much more that hasn't been released into the public domain, as I'm sensing. And this can cause some confusion, but it's timing. As we know, timing has a very important feature. We all want to know everything today, but that's not the way we will proceed, but we will eventually think like the creator thinks and speak like the creator thinks and understand like the creator thinks. But we're approaching that and hopefully sooner than later, but it all depends on what you'd like to do. Thank you, Mr. Kesh, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have life and knowledge with us, or shall I say, knowledge and life. It's beautiful to always hear from you and correct us when we're off or encourage us when we're heading in the right direction. And as we know, you've been working with this technology, I'd say, from the beginning. So no one feel discouraged that you're not picking up every little detail, because I don't think any of us have, except perhaps Mr. Kesh and some other historical figures along the way. I did want to play about 10 or 15 minutes of the 385 that I have queued up, and then I'll play the final disclaimer, and then we'll end the meeting. Would anyone else like to add anything else, or Mr. Kesh may take another question or two? He has plenty of energy to go. All righty. This will be in the Telegram shortly, and then it'll be up and posted around different sites. And I want to thank you all for contributing testimonials, stories, knowledge, and just basic sharing. And I think we will take this teaching today into the deciphering laboratory at some point, and we'll leave that up to Jalal. And of course, there are teachings beginning tomorrow at 10 a.m. CEST for those who are private students. You can join us. We have the One Planet, One Nation, One Race on Tuesday, Knowledge Seekers Workshop on Thursday, and then many other language communities. And again, as we have been taught, or we're learning, that you don't necessarily have to understand the language in the matter state, but the soul is able to understand exactly what is going on. And I always thought that, even though I'm not sure exactly what's being said, I know that the soul is absorbing and is participating in the other language communities. So, and it's always nice for the other language communities to see someone from a different language community there. So keep that in mind. But again, you don't have to appear in the matter state. You can just send your fields, and the souls will understand. Anyone else before we go into this final 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll play the final disclaimer. Thank you, Alex, Mr. Kesh, and all the knowledge seekers for contributing today.